Welcome into another episode of Homegrown. In this week's edition, we welcome in 2014 graduate and state champion Sam Williams. Before we get started, remember to like and subscribe the Jackson Baseball YouTube page, where you can find the rest of the Homegrown series under the Homegrown playlist. Now, without further ado, we welcome in 2014 alumni Sam Williams. Sam, welcome on to Homegrown.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Of course. Sam, we're going to start this how we usually do with all past alumni. Plenty of ways to take this with you, but first things first, youth days, right? You played growing up in the Jackson community with all your teammates you played with in high school. Talk about what that was like for you playing with your friends, and then how it translated for you guys when you hit, the high school program and ultimately dogpiling at the end in Huntington Park in Columbus.
Yeah, so kind of the start of travel ball, whenever it was, I was probably like 9 at the time, but I had an older brother who was a year and a half older, so he played 11U. And so I kind of played up a little bit with him and some of his friends, and then it got to the point where it was like, all right, I'm just going to play with my class. And it was good, but it was like there's so many kids in our class. Mm-hmm. We had actually, I think when it got to like 13 and 14U, where we had, I think there were 3 travel ball teams. It was all pretty good talent, but it was cool because there was, nowadays here, that's how it is. There's so many teams, everyone's playing baseball. It's cool to see. But I think we were like that first class where it was kind of, we're going to take everyone from that age group and put them together, multiple teams, and then that'll transition into when we're freshmen. Everyone's still playing together. Everyone knows each other. We're all friends. Everyone's pretty close. You
guys build that camaraderie and chemistry starting at a young age, and ultimately it helped you transition. I would say by the time you were a senior here, I think you had, 14 seniors in that class, and as most people know, only 9 people play on the diamond at once. So not only, as I know, coming from a big class in 2016, but I'm sure other kids that have gone through the program know how competitive it is here. But talk about how, how much of a thrill it was to win a D1 state championship, be the first one to break through and really start the run of dominance that has been here. But also just how rewarding it was. Like you said, you were with this group from 11, 12, 13, all the way through high school, and then you guys get to end it on your own terms, walking away with a win. Was that rewarding?
Yeah, it's pretty, like seeing it now to where a lot of people, like if you go back and watch, like now, if I go back and watch a high school game or, you see a season end on a loss, and it's kind of like hard to relate to that. Mm-hmm. In a way of like, okay, we won the state championship, and it's like, okay, our season's over, we won.
Right.
Whereas like, one of the years, my junior year we lost, and it's like those seniors, they ended on a loss, or like that's how they remember it. Mm-hmm. But then my senior year, it's like we all remember it as like, oh, like we literally won the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Which is pretty cool.
Right. So, and you guys are one of the first class to get the state championship, and then, like I said, start the run of dominance that has been here under Coach Gamble. But let's move out of high school now, right? Out of high school, you went to Eastern Kentucky.
Yeah, so signed to go to Eastern Kentucky out of high school, and then freshman year I didn't really throw much there at all, like out of the bullpen. They used a lot of older guys. It's pretty common, college baseball, where they just lean on upperclassmen. And then, I guess if you're a freshman or sophomore, you kind of got to prove yourself at some point and earn some trust. And I don't know if I really did that or had the opportunity to prove that. And then after my freshman year, the coach ended up getting fired. So which another like kind of wrench in you're like, okay, I guess you're just starting over. And so I was there for my sophomore year, and another year where like coach kind of probably picked his guys, he brought in some of his own guys, but I wasn't one of those guys that he not had interest in, but just I didn't really play much my sophomore year either. Mm-hmm. So he kind of, like, I burned my red shirt in a pretty weird game. Like, we're getting blown out. He just threw me out there. So it's like he didn't get that year back. And then at the end of the season, I was already like on the fence, like, all right, I'm going to transfer, like, don't have a spot here, or like, it's not a fit anymore.
Right.
And it was pretty like hard talk with him, where he was like, he essentially cut my scholarship and told me at this point, Like, I don't see you playing, like, I don't see you pitching maybe at the Division I level or maybe here. So, like, and he was honest, which you always appreciate the honesty.
Right.
But it's a hard thing at 19 years old to be like, oh, okay. But so ended up transferring, and I'm like, went to summer ball in Florida that year, and that's kind of where I transferred to Northern. But it was kind of it was strange where I went down there. I'm looking for somewhere to transfer to. Found a D2 school to play right away. Due to the transfer rules, like, you can just play right away. And ended up tearing my UCL, so ended up having Tommy John. I'm like, I got to sit out a year now, and it's August in school. College starts in the end of August, and I had nowhere to go after the D2 school took away their offer because couldn't play.
Right.
So I'm home. I was here actually talking with Gamble a little bit, and I called up Will Howder, who went to North Canton. Him and I are good friends. And I said, Will, you guys need any pitchers? He's like, well, what's going on? You'd have to sit out a year, you know that. And I'm like, well, I'm going to need Tommy John. I'm going to have to miss a year anyways. So drove down the next day, literally to Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, and took the visit and everything. And that was like a week before school started. So, I don't know, I kind of owe a lot to him. Definitely owe a lot to him.
But I mean, the rest is history then. You go to Northern Kentucky after sitting out a year. You're finally able to play.
Yeah,
right?
So essentially I didn't play my first 3 years of college. I probably threw like 12 innings maybe. Yeah, so.
But that ultimately is going to lead me to how I want to take this. But we'll come back to that. After college, I'm not what it was like for you, but you end up getting picked up. And not just by anybody. You end up getting picked up by an MLB team. And that's currently where you are right now. So allow the people that, maybe these younger kids that don't know you from 2014, but explain to people where you're at now. I mean, I know I don't want to say it for you. I want to let you tell your own story.
I mean, we can like backtrack a little bit to where it was like, so the first year back from Northern, through all that stuff, I was like, I need a healthy year, need some stats. So I didn't think anything draft wise or was going to happen then. And then my fifth year, I threw, and I was like, okay, pretty realistic with myself at that point. It's like, if you're gonna get drafted, like, we weren't a good college team. We had a lot of young guys, some inexperienced stuff, and we weren't very good. So not a lot of scouts like coming out. Like, you're not getting a lot of attention in that area. So it was like, all right, I'm either gonna be an early round guy that signs for $1,000, or I'm gonna be a late rounder that signs for $1,000, or I just won't get drafted and I'll sign an undrafted free agent deal for $1,000. So, I mean, like, I kind of accepted that. That's where I was at. And then struggled a little bit beginning of my fifth year, and then kind of just turned a page where, let's say, I hit a stride, and it was the last 7 weeks was really good, and caught some attention. And then I don't want to say I was expecting to get drafted, but it was one of those, okay, I could go late. And then it's different now than when it was 3 years ago, where it was 40 rounds. So you literally just watched 1,200 picks go by, and you weren't one of them. And you're like, okay, well, you can't really just sit here and feel sorry for yourself. You got to make some calls and kind of be active. And, all right, what's the next step? So it kind of probably – the last day of the draft, I was talking with the Padres guy, and it was weird. Like, their guy never came out to see me throw, so I wasn't in their database, and they're like, we can't take you, like, you're not in the system. But he's like, can you come down to Cincinnati tomorrow and throw? And I'm like, oh yeah, sure. So it was like the day after the draft, I ended up signing with them after the last day. So it was pretty cool doing all that. And then it was kind of just hit the ground running, fly out. I mean, 5 a.m. flight, 6 a.m. flight out to Peoria, Arizona, where the spring training complex is. And then probably a similar situation where Kyle was, where it's like you're 22, 23 years old, and a lot of 18-year-olds or new draft guys they have raw talent, really, really good, but like it's just not there, not put together. So you're just not like frustrated, or you're just kind of like got to be patient. But I mean, that's where that's where it was college leading in. I guess that not getting drafted, going undrafted, and then segue into pro ball.
And that's where you're at right now, right? So where was single A, and then where you were this summer? I know Coach Campbell came out to see you, but I don't want to give the wrong team name.
Yeah, so in 19, it was getting toward the end of the season, and there's always injuries and everything. So they're like, as an older guy, you get a lot of opportunities. And they're like, well, we're gonna send you to High A, which was in Lake Elsinore, California.
Okay.
And they're like, you could be there for 5 days or the rest of the season for this, the next 4 weeks. I'm like, okay, yeah, it is. Like, all right, leave the next day, all that. I'm there for 9 or 10 days, and then I don't know. Similar thing must have happened in AA because they were like, well, you're going to Amarillo, and you'll just be there the rest of the year. And we ended up winning the Texas League championship. So like my first year of professional baseball, we won the AA Texas League, which is kind of like wild. Like I didn't expect any of that as my first year, and that I don't say that kind of set that like standard. Oh, this is what professional baseball is, because then obviously the next year in 2020 it's just COVID. Mm-hmm. You got nothing. I was out there for spring training early, threw in a couple big league spring training games, and then we got sent home. So it's like that was a wash. And then I was actually here. There was probably 24 guys, just pro ball guys, college guys around here that we were all throwing live BPs, all COVID, whether it was here inside or at Akron. So that's pretty cool. I still got our work in and all that. And then this year was in AA, which was San Antonio. We switched to San Antonio. And then spent some time in Fort Wayne, which was High A. So kind of bounced around there, two of them. And then finished the year in San Antonio.
Okay. So you finished the year in San Antonio, which, like you said, AA. We'll see what next year brings. Obviously, I know you're hoping to be back there, if not higher. But a couple things that I want to bring in now is, I'm sure you would say so, but if people haven't figured out yet, you've been through a good amount of adversity. Whether it was you going to EKU, then NKU, you have the UCL surgery. And then not only that, but like the uncertainty in 2020, right? Like you said, you go out there, next thing you sent home, it's kind of a wash season. How did you, though? I mean, for me, sitting here next to you, I feel like that's quite a bit of adversity you've had to face.
Yeah.
How did you deal with it, though, right? Because as a pitcher, as a baseball player, you're going to face adversity all the time. And, one thing Coach Gamble likes to do here is put his guys in uncomfortable situations, more so in practice, so that when they get in an uncomfortable position in a game, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's a little easier to get that deep breath in and control yourself. Were you able to take any of the adversity you faced and help you, through this journey now into where you're at back in San Antonio in AA?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of hoops to jump through in COVID, at least, there was, whether it was Kyle, Dylan, me, Glenn, a couple other guys throwing in public parks and the cops kicking us out for no reason. I don't know what that, for being outside or something.
Right.
So going from that to then it's like, okay, we got to figure something out, because some of these guys are waiting on the draft. Like we're waiting to hear, like our organizations are up in limbo. They don't know what's going on. So it's like, all right, we're just going to stay ready. We can't really, you can't just sit there and complain and just do nothing. So it's like a lot of guys bought weights, kind of made a homemade weight room, or, we were throwing bullpens in my backyard. It was kind of weird.
Right.
there were probably 4 or 5 of us just threw down a mound in my mom's backyard and just throwing bullpens. And then it got to the point where it was nice out, and we're like, okay, we're not going to go to the alternate training site or have a season. So it's like we got to get something out of that year. So we probably threw once or twice a week live BP, or just getting live at bats in. Here at Akron, just trying to get to 50 innings. It's like, okay, That's somewhat of a season, at least for our arms and everything, but it's just, I don't know, especially with COVID, everyone faced some sort of adversity with COVID, but I think ultimately you can't just sit there and feel sorry for yourself or take the time off. It's like you still got to put in the work.
Right, and you put in the work has led you to where you're at now. I want to talk about two more things, and start with your arm, right? You had surgery on your UCL. And I'm not saying you didn't take care of your arm before, because I know you did when you were in high school, but more so this is for the youth kids watching. Between Nico and myself, we had a team this year, and we were both vocal about arm care to our pitchers. I saw it growing up. I'm sure you saw it playing. I'm sure you saw it even maybe in college still. But can you stress the importance of arm care to the youth kids out there that are going to be watching this, whether they're pitchers or even just everyday position players? Because as any baseball player that knows it's around our age, your arm's going to get ragged out regardless if you're a pitcher or an everyday outfielder, or it doesn't matter. But can you, where you're at now after going through a surgery and then also still playing professional baseball, can you stress to the younger kids, how important that really is?
Yeah, I mean, to the parents too. Jeez.
Right, exactly.
There's so much stuff out there nowadays to where it's like there's so much info that people need to be doing, be more active with arm care. There's a lot of people just here in Jackson Township, Canton, Ohio, or even Akron, that's like you could go to for any sort of lessons, or the coaches. Small colleges here too, they'll tell you. They'll write a program or tell you what you need to do. But it's even if it's something as simple as like, okay, your kid's saying his arm hurts, or like, oh, like my arm hurts a little bit, or it's tired. It's like, okay, maybe not if you're 13 years old. Just take like 4 ibuprofen and keep throwing. Right. Like, how about just you can take a day off? Recovery is just as good as a day as you working out. Sometimes better. Stuff like the drive line, like the reverse throws, all that stuff. Body blades, J-bands, crossover symmetry is a really good one. There's 4 or 5 right there. There's some new guys out there like Armored Heat on Instagram or Twitter. But there's a lot of good platforms that have free stuff to use this. So if you're curious about it, you can really dive into it on Twitter or Instagram, or even ask someone locally. Mike Ray's got a pretty good place. Yep. Some other guys. I don't know what else.
Right. You gave a bunch of people out there watching this a lot of resources just then and there. Yeah. The one thing I want to ask for you to do now, looking back to when you were, some of these kids' age, whether it's before high school or maybe as a freshman, sophomore, what's a word of advice you'd give them? Being where you're at now, but what is something you'd tell the younger generation that's coming up playing baseball, that, and whether it's, their attitude, or whether it's, what to expect when they get to this level under Coach Gamble, or just, dealing with adversity and facing failure? Like what's one thing you'd say to those kids watching this?
There's a couple I would say in the game of baseball, just like same thing as golf, there's just failure everywhere. Like you got to just accept the fact that you're going to fail sometimes. It's going to make you a better player. It's going to make you a better person. I think just as a young person, I'm working hard, just not messing around, but just like, okay, your parents are sacrificing all this time and money. Like, you can put 2 hours of work in. It's supposed to be fun. Baseball's supposed to be a fun sport. So that, and then I would say more of the fact, like, if there's one thing I could tell myself that's like way back, it's like, you're not gonna, everything that happens, it's like it all happened for a reason. Everything that happened in my past in baseball clearly needed to happen for me to become the player I am today. But I don't know. I think big thing too is I wouldn't ever let anyone tell me like, oh, you can't do this, or that's unrealistic. Baseball's a pretty unrealistic sport. I sat in a bullpen this year with a 44-year-old guy who has 13 years of service time, and he said that too. He told me, he's like, you can't be realistic in this sport. He's like, I never thought in my whole life I'd be sitting in a bullpen at 44 still playing baseball. Right. So whether that's coaches or parents or someone, outside guy telling you like, oh, you can't do that, or I don't know, I wouldn't let anyone try and write my story. I'm not going to have someone that doesn't know me or anything like that try to tell me how my story's going to play out.
Exactly. You're the author of your own book. So why let somebody else try to dictate that? So, but no, hopefully though, everybody out there watching that, is able to take something from what you just said and apply it to their everyday life, whether it's, just life, school, or baseball in general if they're watching this. But I want to thank you for hopping on.
Yeah.
Excited to watch you, come next spring, jump up in the ranks of the Padres organization. Excited to watch you from afar. And would like to thank those watching for tuning in to another episode of Homegrown. Until next time, we'll see you when we see you.